My fellow hunters, as you may or may not know, I am a massive Monster Hunter fanboy, as evidenced by the fact that I made a ridiculously long list detailing my favorite foes the franchise has provided. But alas, despite my love for nearly every monster in this series, there are a few that even I cannot defend. In fact, you may say I dislike them, look down upon them, or dare I say, despise them with every fiber of my very being. So in order to properly vent out my, let's say, criticisms, I have constructed this list detailing my least favorite beast the Monster Hunter franchise has ever produced in my eyes. So if you happen to disagree with my choices or feel that one of your least favorites are missing, just remember these are my own personal grudges, and feel free to leave your views in the comments below. Okay, enough of that. Now, for this list, like my last one, I'll be judging them on various factors, but unlike my favorites list, I'll be separating the original species and those subspecies and variants as separate candidates this time around, in order to properly place my disappointment. Also, I'll be primarily judging them on the most current version, and difficulty won't play as much as a factor, so don't expect me to complain about a monster being too easy or too hard. Now, if you all gather your best gear, weapons, and torches, let's indulge in this hunt of what I feel are the worst of the worst. Let us unfortunately begin. Already opening up with some controversy here. I can already hear some of you saying, but Mr. Toxic Tristo, didn't you place Frogadier as your 13th favorite monster on your other list? And to that I say yeah. Yeah, I did, because the original Frogadier is a near perfect combination of style and challenge for me. But the Raging Frogadier variant, on the other hand, is probably one of the cheapest sons of a bitches I have ever encountered in this franchise, which I did try to hint at when briefly mentioning it during my original segment. When Blast Blade was first introduced in Ultimate 3 with Frogadier as its herald, it was challenging but fair since it would give you opportunities to avoid being blown to smithereens. However, this is not the case with the Raging variant. The Raging Brockadier's main gimmick is that the slime on its body would change to red, causing it to immediately explode on contact, and since it would turn quickly without much warning, it leads to a lot of unnecessary damage that under normal situations would be easily avoidable. And the worst part is that the parts of its body that turn are the ones that you have to break in order to even get a chance at some of its drops. Do you have any idea how many times I was about to damage a specific area, only for it to turn red at that exact moment right before I struck? Way too many times. Not to mention the explosions do way too much damage even for a G-Rank. Of course, despite this enormous design flaw, which in my opinion ruined a perfectly fine monster, it still contains a lot of what I really liked about Frogadier in the first place, and to say the gear you can gain from it wasn't worth it would be a major lie, which is why it's so low on this list. But goddamn do I hate being blown up so pointlessly! Am I right, lads, or am I right? Okay, I'm going to keep this one short. Why do I hate the Crimson Quirupeco? I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that it's the biggest coward in all of Monster Hunter, by summoning other monsters to fight you, buff and or heal them, and then proceed to taunt you while it runs away somehow triumphantly to who knows where. It doesn't summon great Jaggies or Bear-Offs, typically like the regular one. No, it calls for Nagakugas and frickin' Devajos to help it out. I think we could all wish we could forget that one specific quest in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate Solo Campaign as you first enter High Ranked, where a Devajo is always guaranteed to appear as you hunt this sucker. And to top it all off, the developers decided to give my least favorite move in the entire game. Solar Flare! God damn it! But to be fair, even as a subspecies, it's a very low rank monster, which when by itself is hardly a challenge. And its design, while I admit does seem a bit out of place, is very unique. Doesn't mean I have any reason to farm it though. Okay, Jillette Sauce is just stupid. Like, out of every monster in this entire series. Jillette Sauce is probably the one that people are going to agree the most on when they think, why does this monster exist? Like, it is seriously just a rubble chicken. That is what it actually is. Someone at Capcom must have just thought, oh, there's no way they could make a rubble chicken monster in this franchise, and one developer was like, oh, I'll take that bet right now, and now we're stuck with it forever. But I don't really hate it. I actually kind of pity Jillette Sauce more than anything else. Like, some of its moves are just, I don't understand them at all. It fakes being dead, which just means you bash on it even more, because that makes sense. That's the survival tactic, obviously. And then sometimes it just runs up a wall just to fall down. It's not, this thing isn't even hard in the slightest. Why give us those advantages? But as I said, I pity this thing more than anything else, but why is it in every goddamn game? It's like, in every single one. I just don't get it. What was the thought behind this? What was the process of developing this monster? Why does it persist in the series? Why can't we make room for something else? I don't get this thing. I really hate the owl. Now, Mephisto was a monster I was actually quite excited for when it was first teased. A giant jester-themed owl? How could they mess that one up? Oh wait, they gave it the worst new gimmick they could think of. The ability to reverse players' controls. A tactic which I thought game developers long since gave up on, since it's a stupidly frustrating gimmick to deal with as a player. But nope, here it is, being wielded by a quick-moving, highly mobile monster that can also inflict the sleep status because Capcom knows how to make a fun monster to fight. The worst part is this ability to reverse players' controls, called Confusion in Monster Hunter, was completely non-existent up to this point. Like, I understand they wanted to add a new status to the game, but still, couldn't they have thought of something else? Thankfully, Mephisto is a smaller monster and thus doesn't have a lot of HP to drag out long fights, meaning the suffering you have to go through will at least be short. Honestly, I could not think of a way to make this thing any more annoying if I tried. Hello? Okay, how is that any worse? No! Oh boy, another classic original generation disappointment. Kazoo, where did it all go wrong? Oh, I know, it all started with your extremely crappy design. I get it, the designers wanted to create a creepy cave crawler. And wow, that concept is clear as day, so are the numerous comparisons this monster gets to a certain phallic-shaped object, thanks to the internet. But for me personally, I see something a bit different when I face off with a Kazoo. Something even dumber. When I battle this creepy crawly, I don't see a nightmare or a phallic object. I see a frozen raw chicken. A frozen raw chicken with a phallic object for a face. Now, with that out of the way, how does this stupid looking thing do in battle? Actually, it's not the worst thing, but by no means even close to the best. Kazoo specializes in electric attacks, which ranges from basic to very annoying, especially its force field move. That move alone has faked me out more times than I care to admit. As a creature specialized to a cave environment, it likes to spend a lot of its time either on the walls or the ceiling of its home, which, while isn't much of a problem in the newer Monster Hunter games thanks to our ability to climb after it, the older games on the other hand did not share this feature, making it a major pain in the ass to fight with melee weapons. On top of all this, the most unforgivable negative aspect against Kazoo is its lack of an actual theme music. I understand they did it in order to add to Kazoo's horror vibe, but the silence just makes it more awkward than scary. Go back to the drawing board, Kazoo, you goddamn failure. They say it's the heat and the isolation of what drives men to go crazy while wandering the desert. I, however, believe that it's facing up against this sand-railing pain in the ass, known as the Cephadrone, is what causes true insanity in the wastelands. Normally, the concept of a sand shark swimming beneath the ground would greatly thrill me. However, whenever I think of the Cephadrone, all I feel is undying rage against this cowardly pack leader, who never seems to stay still. It doesn't even stand out much from its own underlings. Like, the only difference between a Cephadrone and a Cephalosis is that it's slightly larger and just a tiny bit darker in color. That's it. At least some of the other drone monsters have a crest or an enlarged body part to distinguish themselves from their own lackeys. Cephadrone's design is just lazy. But the biggest problem is the entire battle with it, since all it does is swim underneath the ground, barely noticing you as you chase it around the entire bloody area, and then when it does surface, it does its generic hip check or tail stripe, and it's right back into the sand to start the whole rundown all over again. Unless you manage to stand on top of it, that is, in which case it just flops around, thus making targeting its parts way harder than it should be. If I manage to take down a monster, my reward better be getting some clean hits on certain areas, cause if not, what's the goddamn point? And trust me, while all these annoyances are still pretty bad in the newer games, it's way worse in the older ones. I still have nightmares thinking about my encounters with it in Freedom Unite. I can't go back to that. Oh yes, everyone's favorite last unicorn. Oh, how I wish that was true. The last part, not the favorite unicorn part. Despite all my problems with this thing, its subspecies just barely won over its original counterpart as the worst pony ever. Just to be clear, a lot of problems with the Owashi Killoren can also be directed at the normal Killoren, as not to completely leave it off the hook. The main problem with these monsters are its mobility and small bodies. Granted, other monsters have this combination as well, but at least they will occasionally hold still, and are not elder dragons. The Killerens do not. Like ever, all they do is gallop around all over the place, spam their elemental attacks, and charge like blind bulls. Of course, other monsters have similar strategies, and the normal counter to this for experienced hunters is to use large, hard-hitting weapons like the greatsword, switch axe, or hammer, since you won't be able to get many combos off on them. The problem with the Killerens is that their bodies are so small that when hunting in a group, you are extremely likely to be hitting and knocking each other over, making the entire hunt a complete mess. This, combined with the fact they become super armored when enraged, doesn't exactly make their case any better. Of course, those are the problems both Killerens share. What makes the Owashi Killoren way worse in my opinion is actually the fact that it specializes in some very annoying ice-based attacks that make staying close to it, aka the thing you want to do against a mobile monster, a disaster waiting to happen. For starters, it's able to surround itself with ice pillars that when touched cause ice blight. Easy enough to dodge when you're on the outside, but when you're trapped within the perimeter and trying to dodge the Killoren as it charges at you, and well, I think you can see where the problem lies. But the biggest dick move it has under its belt is that it's able to freeze the air around it, giving you exactly 1 second to get away from it before you are immediately trapped in the snowman status. The only thing the Owashi Killoren has going over the original Killoren is its color scheme. It is a very lovely shade of blue. Also, this is its armor. Look at it, and no shame. I hate this fish. You hate this fish. People who have never played Moss Hunter hate this fish. It's Plesioth, because a list containing the worst wouldn't be complete without it. Out of every monster on this list, Plesioth is arguably the most universally despised. I have not once heard a single person defend this aquatic fish chicken thing. Like honestly, those legs are way too long for something like this. Have you seen this thing run? I suppose one of the biggest criticisms is that unlike a lot of other more deserving monsters, Plesioth can say it has been in every single generation of Moss Hunter, much to all our dismay. And the worst part is that the fight with it has not improved in the slightest when it really should have, at least in theory. Gen 4, we were given the ability to finally strike at its high points. Downside, we are now more easy targets for its meme-inducing hip checks. Gen 3. We were finally given the opportunity to chase it down and fight it underwater. Fighting it underwater is a goddamn nightmare. Gen 1 and 2. While its busted hitboxes have become infamous for a reason, so let's leave it at that. Honestly, this monster has so much backlash against it, I really am just beating a dead horse at this stage. So let's just move on and try to forget this mistake that represents everything undecent in life. Everyone's got their opinions on the swimming mechanic introduced in the 3rd generation of Monster Hunter. For me, it was a bit weird, but I can't deny it gave me some wonderful new encounters. All except for one, that piece of shit Gobo. The best way to describe it is think of it like an underwater Jillette Sauce, except we place the poison with paralysis and give it a much better design. Like seriously, even I can't take that away from it. Gobo looks pretty badass. I can, however, twist that into a negative by saying his fantastic design simply makes him even a bigger disappointment in my books. Out of every monster I've ever fought underwater, this one is hands down the worst. The thing isn't even some late game terror that soaks up hits. No, Gobo is actually a monster you encounter pretty early on, and I hate that fact. I hate it a lot. Gobo probably has the most annoying combat kit and fighting style there is in Monster Hunter for me. For starters, it spends like about 90% of its time underwater, and when it does surface, or when you force it to, while it is a complete joke on land, all it does is roll around constantly for like a minute at best, before hopping straight back in. While in the water, it likes to hide under the mud, in order to sleep or launch surprise attacks on you, which are way harder to dodge than they should be. Combine this with the fact that it can only be found in the murkiest water location in the game, at the flooded forest, even trying to find it is a complete chore. It can also, as I mentioned earlier, paralyze you with its quills, and its lantern can form my favorite move in the game.
My ray just blinded me!
Add in the point that it likes to stay ridiculously close to the bottom, thereby protecting its underside and forcing you to attack its reinforced back, and I think I made clear why I despise this deep sea prick. So very, very much. I'm starting to think I have an issue against fish in this game. It has finally come to this, the bane of my hunting existence, my mortal nemesis, the Black Gravios. On paper, this thing should be a favorite of mine. It's a giant bulky stone dragon that shoots lasers. But I don't, and it's because it's twisted what I love, and it's something I can only despise. And what I mean by that is that its lasers are extremely cheap and annoying. Aside from the fact it spams the crap out of them and fires in some pretty sporadic directions, when you actually manage to get close to it when it is firing, it will immediately release heated gas around itself, burning you and knocking you back. Meaning you take a great risk getting close to it when it should be at its most defenseless.
You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
And that's not including its sleep gas, charges, and sky drops, which are very hard to avoid due to its large size and surprising speed. But the most annoying move, thankfully only used in G-Wank, is when it just parades around, releasing its burning gas as it fires numerous fiery puck shots at you that might as well be heat-seeking. And since size equals health in this game, prepare for a long, agonizing confrontation with this dreaded behemoth. It is the only monster for me that is a pain in the ass at both close quarters and range. The only one. Even when the fight is over, it can still horribly screw you over because unlike most monsters, Gravios has an extremely high chance of rewarding you materials you can get from mining instead of actual monster parts, making grinding him for even normal Gravios parts a complete nightmare. Even if I wanted another Firestone, I would mine for it. Come on! Who thought this was a good idea? Who? I demand justice. I demand sacrifice. I demand blood. Okay, it's done. I finally said my piece. Even with stinkers polluting the franchise, Monster Hunter is still one of my favorite franchises and always will be. I just really need to get these opinions off my chest. And please remember, these are just my silly, somewhat justified opinions. I'm sure there are some you agree with and some you don't, but talking about them is an important step in sharing our interests. So I do encourage you to share with the monsters who torment you the most in the comments below. And with that, I bid you a good day, or a good night. I'm out, everybody.